Hi everyone, my name is Angelica Flores, and today for my reading workshop, I'm going to be reading The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. Chapter 1. It goes a long way back, some 20 years. All my life, I had been looking for something, and everywhere I turned, someone tried to tell me what it was. I accepted their answers too, though they were often in contradiction and self-contradictory. I was looking for myself and asking everyone except myself questions which I and only I could answer. It took me a long time and much painful boomeranging of my expectations to achieve a realization everyone else appears to have been born with, that I am nobody but myself. But first I had to discover that I am an invisible man. And yet I am no freak of nature nor of history. I was in the cards, other things having been equal or unequal, 85 years ago. I am not ashamed of my grandparents for having been slaves. I am only ashamed of myself for having at one time been ashamed. About 85 years ago, they were told that they were free, united with others of our country in everything pertaining to the common good, and in everything social, separate like the fingers of the hand. And they believed it. They exulted in it. They stayed in their place, worked hard, and brought up my father to do the same. But my grandfather is the one. He was an odd old guy, my grandfather, but I am told I take care of him. It was he who caused the trouble. On his deathbed, he called my father to him and said, Son, after I'm gone, I want you to keep up the good fight. I never told you, but our life is a war, and I have been a traitor all my born days. A spy in the enemy's country ever since I gave up my gun in the Reconstruction. Live with your head in the lion's mouth. I want you to overcome him with gist, undermine him with grins, agree him to death and destruction. Let him swallow you till they vomit or bust wide open. They thought the old man had gone out of his mind. He had been the meekest of men. The younger children were rushed from the room, the shades drawn, and the flame of the lamp turned so low that it sputtered on the wick, like the old man's breathing. Learning to the young ones, he whispered fiercely, then he died. But my folks were more alarmed over his last words than over his dying. It was a thought, it was a thought that he had not died at all. His words caused so much anxiety. I was warned emphatically to forget what he had said, and indeed, this is the first time that it has been mentioned outside my family circle. It had a tremendous effect upon me. However, I could never be sure of what he meant. Grandfather had been a quiet old man who never made any trouble. Yet on his deathbed, he had called himself a traitor and a spy, and he had spoken of his meekness of a dangerous activity. It became a constant puzzle which lay unanswered in the back of my mind. And whenever things went well for me, I remembered my grandfather and felt guilty and uncomfortable. It was a thought I was carrying out his advice in spite of myself. And to make it worse, everyone loved me for it. I was praised by the most lily-white men of the town. I was considered an example of desirable conduct, just as my grandfather had been. And what puzzled me was that the old man had defined it as trickery. When I was praised for my conduct, I felt the guilt that in some way I was doing something that was really against the wishes of the white folks. That if they had understood, they would have desired me to act just the opposite. That I should have been sulky and mean, and that really would have been what they wanted. Even though they were fooled and thought they wanted me to act as I did. It made me afraid that someday they would look upon me as a traitor, and I would be lost. Still, I was more afraid to act any other way because they didn't like me, because they didn't like that at all. The old man's words were like a curse. On my day, I delivered a narration in which I showed that humility was the secret, indeed, the very essence of progress. Not that I believed this. How could I remember my grandfather? I only believed that it worked. It was a great success. Everyone praised me, and I was invited to give the speech at a gathering of the town's leading white citizens. It was a triumph for a whole community. It was in the main ballroom of the leading hotel. When I got there, I discovered that it was on the occasion of a smoker, and I was told that since I was to be there anyway, I might as well take part in the battle royale to the fought by some of my schoolmates as part of the entertainment. The battle royal came first. All of the times big all of the town's big shots were there and in their tuxedos, wolfing down the buffet foods, drinking beer and whiskey and smoking black cigars. It was a large room with a high ceiling. Chairs were arranged in neat rows around three sides of a portable boxing ring. The fourth side was clear, revealing a gleaming space of polished floor. I had some misgivings over the battle royale, by the way. Not from a distaste for fighting, but because I didn't care too much for the other fellows who were to take part. They were tough guys who seemed to have no grandfather's curse worrying their minds. No one could mistake their toughness. And besides, I suspected that fighting a battle royale might detract from the dignity of my own speech. In those pre-invisible days, I visualized myself as a potential Booker T. Washington. But the other fellows didn't care too much for me either, and there were nine of them. I felt superior to them in my way, and I didn't like the manner in which we were all crowded together into the servants' elevator. Nor did they like me being there. In fact, as my warmly lighted floors flashed past the elevator, we had words over the fact that I, by taking part in the fight, had knocked one of their friends out of our night's work. So this book, I think the main lesson, because I have heard about it, is that sometimes you feel like you're invisible because like nobody cares about you, but sometimes we're wrong about that because there are people who will always love us and take and care us for us. So I hope you enjoyed this book and I highly recommend it.